Welcome into episode 418 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Bridget Prue. We do not have Brian DeFelice today. It was just me and Scott. We both had really busy nights last night doing two different hockey-related things. I was at TD Garden for the Hockey East semifinals, and of course, the late game went to double overtime. Got done like right before midnight. So that was that was good. And then after the press conferences and all is said and done, like you're not getting home till 1 a.m. And but the Bruins game also was a 10 p.m. puck drop out in Vegas. And that's what Scott was tasked with following along with. And what time did you end up there?
I would let me just say I would have much rather been at the Garden watching double overtime
It
than
was a
watching
good
that
game.
Bruins game.
It was a good game. It was this
Bruins game not so much.
No, I watched it this morning because I was dead tired when I got home last night. But yeah, yours wasn't as fun, though. I don't think you would have enjoyed the Garden either necessarily.
Well,
The first
I did not
game,
enjoy the first game. I got to watch that before the Bruins game. And
yeah. So the first game, BU lost to UConn and really didn't show up pretty much at all. So Scott, you could have skipped over that one. But no, that main game against Northeastern was really one of the better hockey games of the whole season. A lot of people that I was with there were like, "This is the best game we've ever been at," and I'm like, "It was good. It was good. I was getting tired, but it was a good game. Maine ends up winning, so the championship game is going to be tonight, UConn against Maine, and I think the crowd's going to be awesome. The
yeah,
Maine fans, there were so many Maine fans there, but
their,
there was a
their
lot of
fans are
Northeastern
their
fans
fans are
too.
the best. Maine
Yeah.
has easily the best fan base in New England and one of the best in the country. Like North Dakota's probably ahead of them. You see North Dakota fans travel like crazy, but there aren't too many others that you'd put ahead of Maine. So yeah, they'll be on full force. I think UConn, they definitely have a nice following behind them that's built up in recent years.
Yeah.
When they were in the Hockey East Championship game a couple years ago, they had a good crowd there. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
should
it'll be good. I saw some people that I know from UConn there. The women's coach, Chris McKenzie, was there. I happened to walk into the elevator and I didn't even notice them. And then all of a sudden, I hear someone making a joke about the giant pizza that I had, and I was like, "Oh, yep, it's him." He's very, very sarcastic. So yeah, there's a lot of the hockey world ends up there, and you never know who you're going to see or what's going to happen. So I'm excited for that. We're both going to be there tonight. And it should be a really great atmosphere. And I feel so bad for Eric Galanti, who is they're doing the play-by-play on Nesson. He has no voice. Like when we got there, he had no voice. And I was like, for a second, I'm like, I might have to do this game. Like,
I was gonna say,
talk.
were you like going behind the scenes to like Steve Metcalf and Nesson and like, guys, do you hear Eric's voice? He can't do this.
No, no. Eric is my one of my broadcast partners. He does This Week in Hockey East with me. I felt really bad because I was there last week. You remember what I was like last week?
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, it's going through all of us. Like even Cooper Boardman, who did it on WEI, was sick too. So it's just kind of going around. But anyway, I think we're
Bridget's
avoiding talking about this.
Bridget's spreading the plague to work her way up to a championship broadcast.
I actually think I did give it to Cooper. On accident. And I think I caught it from another broadcast partner like a few weeks ago, and it's just gone through like the whole crew. But I didn't give it to Eric. I know that. But anyway, I think we're just trying to avoid talking about this
Mm.
Bruins game. Uh,
But before we get to that though, just to reiterate, so if people are driving around or whatever Friday night, you can get the Hockey's Championship game on the Odyssey app on WEI.
yep,
So if you're not able to watch on TV, you can listen that way.
yep. Cooper Boardman is play-by-play, and Jim Connolly is color. These are two guys I work with all the time. They're very good. They did a great job yesterday too. So, and they're trying to keep as healthy as possible. But double overtime never helps. Never makes you feel like I could tell Eric at the very end of the night was like, I want to go home. But yeah. So we'll get to the Bruins now. We'll start with
Unfortunately,
unfortunately, here we go. We'll start with our opening shifts. I will go first just because this is such a common theme and yours is more specific as well. So we'll start here. It's hard to watch these games with the amount of time that the Bruins are hemmed in, don't have the puck, like are spending not in their offensive zone. And so, I mean, there's a lot of factors that play into it, why that is. But the end result is that they're generating so few shots on net game after game. We're now 10 straight periods where they haven't had more than 10 shots. So everything's been under 10 shots a period for the last 10 periods, which dates back, over 3 games. And it's hard to watch. It's certainly I feel like it's really noticeable when it's the home game and the home crowd notices and they give you a little bit of a boo bird, but it's there's just a lot that goes into why that is. But the end result is that you're you're not going to generate offense. You're not going to, have multi-goal games. We see it again in Vegas. It's 5-1 loss and they just spent most of the time defending. And some of their better chances came on the power play, but I still don't think the power play looked good, which we'll get into as well. But Scott, you had more numbers about the historical nature of how bad the shooting has been.
Yeah, it's brutal. So they've now been held to 20 shots or fewer in 3 straight games. Since the NHL started officially recording shots on goal in the 1959-60 season, no Bruins team has ever done that for 3 straight games. They've also been held to 25 or fewer in all 6 games that they've played since the trade deadline. And again, in that same time frame since 59-60, they'd only done that 6 straight games of 25 or fewer once, and that was in October of 1998. So it's just like literally historic levels of offensive futility for this Bruins team. And yeah, I do want to get into some of the reasons and Joe Sacco's comments about it post game as well. But I'll go into my opening shift first, which is about someone who maybe will be able to help generate offense, and that's Fabian Lysell, who is on this trip. He and Mike Callahan were called up on an emergency basis on Tuesday, practiced with the team Tuesday, traveled, practiced in Vegas, but they were both healthy scratches on Thursday. Sacco has said that both will play at some point on this road trip, to which I say, great, let's start Saturday with Lysell specifically, because look, do I think Lysell has done everything to earn this opportunity? No, I think he's been pretty inconsistent in Providence, quite frankly. Do I think he's going to solve all their issues? Definitely not. Any of their issues? Maybe not. But you have nothing to lose. Like there's too many guys in this lineup right now who already aren't earning their keep. So if Lysell's going to be with the team, he should play. It doesn't do any good to just have him be a healthy scratch. Like if you're going to do that, just leave him in Providence and call up, Riley Tufte or whoever as insurance. Like honestly, like someone who's not still developing and needs game action.
And you know that's serious when Scott says that, because Scott last episode said, please don't let it be Riley Tufte.
Well, yeah. Well, don't be Riley Tufte. Like if he's going to play, if he's just going to sit and be a healthy scratch, then fine, whatever. But that there are some complications that, I guess we can get into with the whole like recalled on an emergency basis and what that means and why they do that. But either way, like they already said Lysell's going to play. So to me, you might as well start Saturday. It's, San Jose in theory is an easier opponent, although there's no easy opponents for this team, but like at least you're not throwing them in against Vegas, who's one of the best teams in the league. So interested to see if Lysell gets a chance here.
Well, I really hope so. I mean, when I saw that the news came down that he got called up, it was like, oh, okay. Finally, we'll get another chance to see. And it's a long road trip and they need help. And they're certainly not a roster where everybody's safe. Like there's definitely spots to put him in. And this is a conversation I was having with Arcan the other day was there's never been a time where it really like was just wide open for a prospect to come up over the past few years because this the NHL roster the Bruins had was always pretty solid, right? Especially if you think back to 2 years ago, nobody was coming up and stealing a spot really. Like there wasn't time to or availability of an opening to give someone like Lysell a chance, a look in the pros, and to try to give him a chance to win his way in. But now there is. Like now there's no reason not to. You're not making the playoffs. You have to find out what you have in Lysell at some point. You probably just considering how long he's been playing in Providence, it's not the same argument as Pacho where it's like, oh, he could still develop. Like, sure, maybe he can, but at some point in time, your development has to start to be at a higher level, and just give him a chance to work through some of the NHL stuff. Nobody's going to be upset if he makes a mistake and oh no, now the Bruins are going to get a higher draft pick. Like people aren't going to care, and it's a really kind of perfect moment to see what you have in him, and if it works out that the offense looks better, great. Maybe you solved something. Maybe you even just learned a little bit about your prospect pool a little bit more and what you have. But yeah, if he doesn't get in this road trip, I swear, like if I were him, I would want to be just way gone, and like I would have given up on the hopes of making it here and want to leave town.
Well, now he has to get it. I mean, Joe Sacco said on the record in a press conference he's going to play at some point during this road trip. So like, you can't throw that out there and then not play him. Like, you can't lie to the kid. So yeah, like he's going to. Now I mentioned the like emergency recall thing. So technically, an emergency recall is only supposed to play if you drop below 12 healthy forwards or 6 healthy defensemen. Now teams can, fudge that a little bit and say, "Oh, so and so's banged up, he needs a night off." And like there you go. It's like, is the NHL really going to investigate and figure out if that's true or not? Probably not. But the other reason that they make emergency recalls this time of year instead of regular recalls is your teams are only allowed 4 regular recalls from the AHL between the trade deadline and the end of the regular season. So you can make as many emergency recalls as you want. So that's a way around it. So we'll see if it gets converted to like a regular recall at some point, or if they just kind of fudge it and say Patrick Brown's banged up, he's gonna sit type of thing. But that's sort of like the deep dive on why they use certain language. And by the way, you might also see if Lysell does play, you might see him get sent down in a paper transaction after and then be emergency recalled again. If people remember a couple years ago, this happened with Jacob Lauko like 8 times where he was constantly getting sent up and down and he was doing the Abe Simpson walking into the room, putting his hat, picking it up, walking back out. GIF Bridget, not GIF. Like that's what that was all about at the time, was because they were all emergency recalls.
Yeah, and he just tweeted that out again when he came back to Boston.
Yeah.
I think he just likes The Simpsons, but or just that meme. But yeah, so it is important, I guess, to point that out to people, like what the terminology means and why it's I won't even call it gamesmanship because it's something that everybody does. I guess maybe that's the right term. Maybe it's not quite, but it's kind of like we all know we all need to use it, so it's we just do it and we don't really enforce it too much. But yeah, you can always upgrade to a regular recall if they think he's gonna stick around and not just try to put him in when somebody's banged up, whether they are or not. But I'm hoping that is coming up soon. We'll have something more to talk about than, watching the same show, same thing, different day. Um,
I mean, we like he needs to play Saturday, so we have something to talk about Sunday because otherwise I'm just going to do 2 hours on Macklin Celebrini on Sunday skate. So
I thought you were gonna say Hockey East, which I was fine with, but we'll do our Sunday selection show for the men's hockey tournament, right?
yeah, I'll predict the perfect. I'm very good at college hockey bracketology, which is
Okay.
admittedly much easier than basketball bracketology.
Yeah, there's 16 teams, not was 64 or no, it's
Yeah,
more than that now,
there's
right?
yeah, technically there's like 68 with the playing games.
Yeah.
There's also just a very set mathematical formula called the pairwise, so that makes it a
Yeah,
lot
he's
easier.
like, "I'm so good at this," and it's like, it's literally there, and they literally tell you. No. So, you're better at it than I am, even though I should be better at it. But no, I think the closest one to everyone in the Boston area is the Manchester Regional. And people, I think it's gained popularity of calling this the region of death because it has BC and Denver, most likely, which was the championship game last year. So it has like theoretically the two teams to beat in the same regional, and it's in Manchester. So that's going to be good hockey. And then PC's probably going to be there too. So I'll be there broadcasting that. And you could come see Scott too. Oh, I'm putting the wrong way again. You could come see Scott too because you'll be there covering it. Just or maybe are you just going as a fan?
No, I'm going as media, so I'll be writing and doing some actual work.
Or we could just both decide to just go as fans and have a beer and watch some hockey. No, that never really happens for us. But anyway, I once again tried to distract us from this talking about this Bruins game.
Yeah, well, I mean, like it's tough to talk about because it's like it was so bad, right? Like, I mean, first period not bad. They actually started pretty well. Vegas starts to take control as the first period goes on, but it's still 0-0. So you're like, I think Judd and Brick maybe even said it going to the first intermission. Like, pretty solid road first period, right? Like, feel like you maybe found your legs a little, get out of it scoreless. And then the second period, again, this has become a trend recently, just a disaster. They spent pretty much the whole period in their own zone. Uh, take a penalty. They fall behind 1-0 on a power play. They land just 4 shots on goal in the second period. I believe that's now in the last 3 second periods, they've landed a total of 8 shots on goal. So like again, bad combination of you're getting pinned in and it's the long change, so you can't even get like one or two guys off. So you're just getting 5-man units just stuck out for a minute, minute 30, maybe longer. Um, icings, like victimized by another icing in this game. Uh,
They jinxed Nikita Zadorov, by the way, on the broadcast. They said he's doing a lot better not taking stick infractions in the second half and than in the first half. And then next thing you know, he gets called for a stick infraction. And yeah. So that they got him with that. But in the first intermission, like I like to make sure to listen to like what Razor says and GG and they were talking about like yeah, not a terrible road period to start. They but the signs were already there. I think it was the last 11 and a half minutes they didn't have a shot. So like the first not like 9 minutes they were generating the offense. That's when they had their power play. But then like the second half of that period, they didn't have a single shot on goal.
yeah,
Um,
over. I think that. So I would have to relook, but my numbers, what I had was over the final 12 and a half minutes, they got outshot 9-1.
okay. Yeah. So that's how the period ended. And I know that one of the pros of that period was that Swayman had really done some good work to try to to help keep them off the board and made some important saves and Razor was praising, how he came out ready to play. And I guess his family was in the building. His father, I think, at least was there, traveled from Alaska to Vegas. Not a bad trip to make. And then you see, and then I guess, Scott, where do you think Swayman's game went, like, from that point? What did you think of him, um, in terms of uh, going through each of the goals, I guess?
So I feel like so a couple games ago he had a legitimately bad game. I feel like the last couple he's still giving up a lot of goals, but to me it's not necessarily that he's been bad as it's he's not picking the team up. Like this is kind of where we've been for a while where it's like again to be an elite NHL goalie, you can't just make the saves you're supposed to make. You got to make some you're not supposed to. You got to bail your team out. You got to take goals off the board at times. And I feel like Swayman, for much of the season, has been in the spot where it's like he just goes as the team goes. If the team in front of him gives up great chances, he's gonna let them into the net. And if the team in front of him is, steps up and plays lockdown defense, like he'll step up behind them. And that's just not. That's what a league average goalie does. Is like you go up and down with the team in front of you. An elite goalie is up regardless of what the team in front of him does. And that's where I feel like Swayman's coming up short is like look, if he's way better last night, did the Bruins win? Probably not. Like they just didn't play well enough. They're just not good enough right now, especially against a team like Vegas. Um, but I don't look at that game and I'm like, oh, that could have been 9-1 without Swayman. It's like, no, it's probably 5-1 with just average goaltending. Like, I don't think he added to the problem or took away from it. It's like he's just kind of there in some of these games. And, if the team in front of him plays well, he'll play well. And if they don't, then then the game can kind of get away from him too. And again, I feel like that's happening with a lot of guys right now where I think you're starting to see guys kind of let go of the rope, like that they kind of banded together those two games right after the deadline. And now as it starts to set in that like, yeah, this season's over and like there's not going to be a playoff push. I think you're seeing guys just take their foot off the gas and starting to go through the motions. And like that leads to really ugly hockey. And if your goalie's kind of doing the same thing, it leads to a lot of goals against.
Yeah. I mean, it's not been fun to watch. Yeah, too bad, too bad Swayman couldn't have gotten the win yesterday and then, like, celebrated that Maine was going to the championship game. Because Swayman, obviously, Maine guy, graduated from Maine not that long ago. Um, and the funny thing is actually Alvin Boya, who's Maine's goalie now, is one of the, I think they named 4 guys, finalists for the Mike Richter Award, which Swayman won when he was in college, which is the best college goalie. Um, and I saw a lot of Swayman Maine jerseys at the Garden yesterday, and I'm sure we'll see them again today. Um, so yeah, and looking at like I went through and I looked at like what the breakdowns were for each goal, and some of them are, you know, definitely not to be put on Swayman. Some of them there's just like quick defensive breakdowns and yeah, Dorofeyev, I was impressed. I mean, I saw he was like his nose was plugged and everything. He's scoring like this hat trick with his nose plugged and blood coming out his face and
Yeah, and he's a sniper. Like some of those are really
yeah,
good finishes. Again, this
well,
isn't like I'm not gonna sit here and say Swayman gave up soft goals because I don't really think he did. They were all pretty legit scoring chances. I just think like if you're getting great goaltending, one or two of them are probably saved.
yeah. And another frustrating thing I think is you watch the Bruins power play and fans have seen it the whole year and not seen it really improve, and it's been a struggle. then you watch the Vegas power play, and, like, whenever I watch Jack Eichel go to work on the power play, I'm just sitting there going, like, where could we get a Jack Eichel? Like, he makes the power play just run like clockwork, and it's like, could you steal something from what he's doing, or can you just steal Jack Eichel?
They
Because
they could have
he's very
traded
good at
for him.
that.
They didn't want to step up and beat Vegas's offer. And the if we like go back to that, like the timing was off because they still had Bergeron and Krejci and didn't have an immediate need for a number one center. But it's like, I don't know, you kind of knew this was coming, where those guys are going to retire in the not too distant future. And it's easy to say in retrospect, but like
Mhm.
I know, like, I was aboard the idea of trading for Eichel at the time because, again, there just aren't many opportunities to get guys like that. Like, you're seeing
His,
it now. Like,
his contract is up after next season.
yeah, is it 26 or 27? He's a free agent.
I thought it was after next season, which would make it 27 summer, right? No?
Well,
No.
next season would be
Wait,
26.
26, yes.
Uh,
Um, he he would be somebody that he would be someone that you would have to
next season
really,
is the last. So yeah, so summer of 26, he's a free agent if
and
he
we were
doesn't
talking.
resign before then.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and obviously that conversation goes away if he gets an extension, but or do they find themselves at some point next season in negotiations that aren't going well and decide to trade him at the trade deadline, or try to trade him and get something for him, or you know does he walk in free agency to just get the biggest paycheck he possibly can? He's somebody that I think is an awesome player, that could help, but the Bruins are probably in need of something sooner than that, unless they're really like future looking and they're like, no, we're not going to have Mitch Marner this offseason because we actually would prefer Jack Eichel, and let's just hope he goes to free agency. Like, that's just too much to try to gamble on and guess on. But I do like the idea of him coming back to play in Mass.
Yeah, and he's said before that, like, he'd like to play for the Bruins at some point, but that could be when he's 40 years old at the very end of his career. Like, I know he also loves Vegas, and generally that front office gets things done and is clearly not afraid to spend money and not afraid to make tough decisions and trade away other guys if they have to. So I feel like he's going to end up staying there, but I guess we'll see what happens. But um yeah, Bridget, you mentioned Bruins power play, and like something I wanted to point out here is, of course, I just exited out of this tab like an idiot, but is how few power plays they've had recently. Like, they've had exactly one power play in 4 of their last 6 games. Uh, they've had more than 2 in a game just once in all of March. And this comes back to, like, yeah, well, they don't have the puck. Like, they're not doing anything. They're not putting defenses on their heels, so they're not forcing teams to take penalties. They're not putting refs in a position where they have to call anything. Like, I'm sure if we went through this, it's like, okay, you could find missed calls here and there. Like, definitely in overtime the other night against Buffalo, like they missed one, probably 2 penalties. Um, but for the most, definitely like 5-on-5 throughout the course of regulation, like, they're not putting themselves in a position to get penalties called because they don't have the puck and they're not challenging defenses. So that's another problem. Like, you need to get on the power play more to find any sort of rhythm. Like, if you just get one a game, well, it's tough to find any sort of rhythm because how many times do you see, like, first power play maybe like a little tenuous, and then the second one you figure something out? Well, they're not even getting the second one, so
Or like the
it's
first power play, you don't win the opening face off, and then like you have trouble getting back in the zone, so you don't even really get like a real look. Whereas each power play is different. Winning that first face off is important, and some teams are very good at, once they clear the puck, not allowing that re-entry on the power play. So yeah, like that's gonna make it look different too, is just flip of the coin whether or not you win that opening draw and get to set up. But yeah, the main issue is, and this comes to the shot thing too, in my opening shift, like when you don't have the puck, you can't do you can't draw penalties, you can't shoot, obviously. Like you're at risk of, taking a penalty to have to try to slow someone down, especially when they're cycling or when they have a partial break or things like that. And I feel like in years past, the Bruins used to have some really good puck possession guys and some guys that were really good at drawing penalties. Like I feel like even Jake DeBrusk was pretty good at it. He would when he carried the puck, like he would get a little bit of separation, which would tempt people to try to get a stick in, slash, or whatever. Um, and then Bergeron, obviously great puck possessor. Even Charlie Coyle in the past, great puck possessor. And like there are certain guys that would draw more penalties because and Pasternak being the main one, because of his speed and because of how much he has the puck and how good he is with the puck. But if guys like that don't have it, then you're not drawing it. And it's just it's a microcosm of things that have gone wrong in terms of power plays and drawing penalties.
Yeah, and Joe Sacco post game on Nesson clearly was upset about what he called overpassing. Um, he said it's something that we talk about. Obviously, we overpass. We talk about playing off the shot more, shot volume. We did it for a while. We had success, but now we're trying to make the cute play, the fancy play all the time. It doesn't work in this league. And then he went on and said, until we start building our game more offensively, creating more zone time, we're going to spend time in the D zone. And so, like, I hear that and I'm like, yeah, like that's part of it. There is overpassing at times. I also think guys are missing the net and shooting into bodies. Like that's a problem. Um, and that is guys like trying to go for volume, right? Like guys are taking long shots, but they're just going right into shin pads and like turning the other way. Mason Lohrei in particular has been guilty of this quite a bit recently. Nikita Zadorov on I don't what goal even was this? I think the fourth goal. No, the third goal. Um, Zadorov has a shot blocked, can't figure out where the puck goes, and then it's a 3-on-1 the other way, and Howden scores. Um, so like that's also an issue, like not getting shots through. So it's like, yeah, there might be overpassing times, but other times they're not working enough to break down the defense, and they're just shooting into bodies. And then in the D zone, like they're not killing plays. And this is, I think, you see the talent, the lack of talent show up in a couple areas. And one is you don't have enough guys making plays offensively, which again is like maybe that's an area Fabian Lysell could help. But the other is in the D zone, like they're just not good enough to kill plays quickly. Like it's a lot of like just trying to stay in front of guys and like stick with them and try to keep them to the outside. But like in the process, you're ceding possession. You're giving them a minute plus in the offensive zone because you're just hanging on. You're just following. You're just chasing. And what really good teams do is they close quickly and aggressively and they kill plays. They force turnovers, they force tie ups, and they get the puck going the other way. And this team at times, it's like they're just like not good enough to do that defensively, or maybe they're not playing together as a group or whatever it might be. But the long possessions that they cede, it's like you watch it and it's like it's just five guys just holding on for dear life, like hoping that they get a whistle so they can get off the ice.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. And yeah, I want to look ahead at some of the other games they have coming up, because just to get an idea of where the rest of this month is gonna, what it's gonna look like. So you mentioned Saturday, 10:30 puck drop which is really difficult over here on the East Coast. Against the
Especially when you have a
Sharks.
9 a.m. radio show the next morning.
Yeah, Scott, you can do that without me this week.
I don't think
Well,
so.
and then that night, Sunday night, 9 p.m. against LA, 10 p.m. on Wednesday against.
Making me miss the White Lotus. I have to watch this team instead of White Lotus.
I'm
It's so
sorry,
sad.
very sorry. I've never watched White Lotus, but
It's really good.
so
Hey, can we
Wednesday.
just talk about that? I'd rather talk about that than the Bruins.
Okay, sure. I
No,
can't.
I'm just
I
kidding.
can't add anything, but unless I really go quickly and catch up. But yeah, no. The upcoming schedule. The teams aren't the most difficult. Like the Kings are decent this year. Detroit, like that's another one that's. But like you should be able to beat the Sharks and the Ducks, but just with the team
Should
that
you? Like, are we?
the team that they well, that's what I
I
was
don't.
going.
There's no one. There's no one in the league that I would look at and say the Bruins should be right now. Like, there's just not. This team with this roster, like as currently constructed, is one of the worst teams in the NHL. Like, if they had this roster over the course of an entire season, they would be in contention for the number one overall pick. I truly believe that. Like, this is just a straight up bad roster. You have one line right now, and that's really it. Your top two defensemen are out, so you don't have a top defense pair. You don't have a top four to speak of. You have no second or even third line, quite frankly. Like you you have enough guys that like you could, I guess, put to like all right, if you put Khusnutdinov, Middlestad, and Elias Lindholm together, like that could be a good third line. But like they're split up because you have so few options up front. Like no, like I don't know. They could lose every game on this road trip, and it wouldn't surprise me.
And I don't think fans would necessarily be that upset either. I mean, we don't want to like fans don't want to watch that hockey, but the higher the draft pick, I know just people are for that for good reason. And especially seeing as it's not really a salvageable season. So that's one main thing that people are okay with now. Like you can swallow it now that you know like what happened at the deadline is change the direction of of where things were going away from trying to make a push. So big
So
time sell leads you to have this roster that yeah, you're wondering is this a team that could beat the Sharks, which if you said that at the beginning of the season you'd be like of course, they should be able to beat the Sharks, but here we are.
yeah, so I think there's definitely I don't know what the percentages are, but yeah, there's definitely a portion of the fan base that's okay with losing as much as possible the rest of the way and getting as high a draft pick as possible. Like those fans are definitely out there.
But are
I
those
will I
fans
will
also
say
gonna watch like, are those fans, like, just genuinely curious, like, if this is you, comment in the YouTube or tweet at us, like, are those fans also watching every game? Like, if they're tanking, like, sure, full tank, get the highest pick possible, but are you also just, like, watching in the meantime all the, like, the losses? Or are you just saying tank and
yeah.
I'm gonna just put it in the back burner and not worry about watching any
Well,
more
and
games?
that cuts to like the heart of the matter when it comes to the organization having an appetite for like a real rebuild instead of a retool is yeah, like I think you're right. I think a lot of those fans who say like, "Oh yeah, they should go to the bottom, get as high a pick, take the step back for however many years it takes, and like, land your true number one center and draft, develop them, whatever." And it's like, well, how many of the fans saying that are just going to check out until or unless this team's ready to compete again? And like, therein lies the problem: is the Jacobs family isn't going to be like, "Oh yeah, no, that's fine. We'll just come back in 5 years when we're good again." Like, no, they're going to be like, "Oh shit, look at our ratings, look at attendance going down, look at our merchandise sales, dropping through the floor." And they're going to be like, yeah, no, enough of this. We're not waiting long term. Like, let's change general managers and go find someone who's going to get us back, in a year or two. Like, because again, I've said, like, from where this team is now to being a contender again, to me, I would be stunned if that happens in 1 year. Like, I just don't think it's happening next year. If it does, every Don Sweeney critic should like bury, like, just log off forever, because that would be like amazing if Don Sweeney gets this team from here where they are right now, sitting here on this Friday morning, to like even like a legit good playoff team, even if they're not a true cup contender. If he has them as like the 4 or 5 team in the East next year, that would be amazing to me. I don't think it's going to happen. So I think you're talking at least 2 years down the road. Um, and it's tough. Like, there's, again, it's really easy for people to say, like, oh, yeah, that like they have to do it right and take their time. And it's really hard to then sit there and watch that every night and play losing hockey in front of your fans at the Garden and get booed off the ice. Like, it becomes a lot harder to stomach that when you're watching that over and over. We've been doing this. The trade deadline was 2 weeks ago. Like, we've been doing this for 2 weeks and people are already losing their minds, because what I was going to get at is, like, as much as there are some fans that are okay with just getting this high pick, I also still see a lot of anger on social media of people like calling this team embarrassing and criticizing their effort and saying like they should be ashamed of themselves. And it's like, I don't even know if there is a lack of effort. Like, at times, probably, like I said, I think some guys have kind of let go of the rope a little. But again, even with effort, like, what is this team ceiling? What are they doing? Like, they're not making a playoff push. Those first 2 games after the deadline, like, it was a mirage. That they weren't going to keep playing like that because they're just not good enough. So, yeah, like, I don't know. Like, what? Sure, you can ask for a great effort every night, but ultimately, if the team still stinks and is losing, like, is that really going to make you feel a whole lot better?
Yeah, and I know people who tuned out as soon as Marchand got traded. I have several friends who are big time hockey fans. They go to pretty much every college hockey game, Bruins game. And they said, I'm not watching this team the rest of the year. Because they were upset about Marchand getting traded. They know the team's not gonna be, as fun to watch with what they did and the way that the lineup shakes out right now. So they're like, I'm done for this year at the very least. Like, and they mean it and they love hockey. So and I don't know. I think that there's certainly a lot of different factions of fans right now where some are willing to still like tune in and pay attention. And like including whoever's listening to our podcast. So clearly you haven't completely stopped paying attention to the Bruins. But
By the way, thank you to anyone who is sticking this out through the end every year.
yes.
Like, we're trying. Uh, we'll also mention, like, we're doing a mailbag next week, so like we're gonna keep trying to make entertaining episodes and provide good analysis, and obviously talk big picture as much as like the day to day of these games. But um, no, we do appreciate it, because I also, yeah, I do understand that there are people who not only aren't watching, but are kind of just like done with all Bruins content for the year, and or whatever. Like, maybe they've turned to Celtics, maybe they're watching college hockey, maybe they're getting excited for Red Sox season, which starts next week. Like, I don't. I get it. I get why people might just be completely out on this team. So we do appreciate people still listening.
Okay. Keep listening to us because we're about to go to Montreal again, and there should be some fun stories out of that. We'll
Oh,
see if we lose Scott in the streets again.
I know. I said I'm not doing a beer tower this year. So
Come on. Last year, that was where all the fun started. We started with a beer tower. We're like, you know what? Let's go right to the beer tower. And then that was just the first stop of the night.
Yeah, next morning was rough. That was
Next morning, I have a really nice picture of Scott looking really hungover.
I needed to sweat it out at morning skate.
Yeah, you were rough. You were in rough shape. I wasn't quite as bad. So I knew Scott was in trouble when we had the beer tower at what, like 7:30. I don't know. We had the beer tower like maybe around 8 o'clock, and we finished it. And I'm like, I don't feel anything. Like for the amount of beer that we had, I was like, why am I not feeling anything? And
Because
then
I
I look
drank
over.
75% of it.
No, yeah. Well, I hope you didn't because I paid for half of that. But I look over at Scott and I go, "Do you feel anything?" And he's like, "I don't know." And then he gets up and goes to the bathroom and he's like, "I thought I was gonna have to scoot down the stairs."
Okay, that was a joke though, in fairness. Like, I don't want people thinking I was like that messed up. That was actually a
I
joke.
don't know. See, I read
No.
it as like it was a joke. It was like you really were like maybe, but not quite. But no. And then the rest of the night he walked around with a birthday crown on that I gave him, and it was a good night.
I don't have anything else to say about the Bruins, honestly.
Me neither. Me neither. All right. Well, Brian, we hope you're having fun. He's missed today because he's at a bachelor trip. I almost called it bachelorette. He's at a bachelor trip, not his own, one of his friends. And hopefully he's enjoying his time. And yeah, so next we'll record. Well, listen to Sunday Skate because that's the next time we'll be doing anything, right? So Sunday morning, if you can wake up in time after a 10:30 puck drop the night before, but we also post that on our channel. So if you don't catch it live, I post it on YouTube and I post it on Apple, Spotify, whatever. So tune in then and send in your mailbag questions and we'll try to answer that. And hopefully we have Fabian Lysell to talk about uh and maybe
Yeah.
maybe Koozie Gang because Brian started to gain some members of the Koozie Gang.
Well, that's true. So I did. I'll just plug it. I did write a feature on Marat Khusnutdinov that went up on WEI.com Thursday morning. Um, People can find that. Basically, just stuff that we've talked about, but covering how he's being used in a different role, and has certainly flashed some skill that makes you think he really might be more than the fourth liner that Minnesota was using him as. Um, Obviously there's still stuff to work on. He was part of a defensive breakdown that led to a goal against in the Vegas game. Like that, exactly even said it. Like his play away from the puck, he still has to get better. But when he's on the puck, when he's attacking on offense, like you see some skill that I think it can at least make him a third liner. And because he's only 22, like maybe there's even upside as a second liner at some point down the line. So, yeah, I talked to him for the first time. I think that was Tuesday morning after practice, and which was it was pretty good because his English isn't good enough for him to do like full media scrums yet. Like you can tell like he has to like take time to kind of like process the question and think about his answer, but his English is getting better. Remember, he just moved to the United States from Russia last year, almost exactly a year ago at this time. He came over to Minnesota as like once his KHL season ended or as it was winding down. Um, and he had only had like minimal English schooling growing up. He said they do teach English in schools in Moscow, but because he was on like select hockey teams, he was traveling a lot, so he didn't really go to a ton of the like English classes. Um, so I know he credited like Kirill Kaprizov with helping him learn some English in Minnesota. Nikita Zadorov will be a help for him here for sure. And then he plans on like really making more of an effort to improve his English over the summer. So, but he like you could still get interesting, thoughtful answers from him. And hopefully people see a couple of those in the story. Like he wouldn't say that Minnesota was misusing him. He was like, I'm just a hockey player. If you tell me to play defense, I'll play defense. But then like when I followed up and was like, but do you like how you're being used here more? He just like smiled and he was like, oh yeah, like clearly it's like, yeah, it's more offense and it's more minutes. Of course he likes it more.
And he's got the Kusi gang growing. So
yeah.
Here you're talking about how merch is going to go down, but then I'm thinking, what about all those people buying Khusnutdinov jerseys?
I feel like we still have to settle on his nickname because I guess in Minnesota his nickname was Hootsy, which I haven't heard anyone on the Bruins say. So like I don't know if they're just giving him his own nickname or if he has any say in it, but
probably not. No, normally somebody just says it and then it sticks. Like you didn't have like I have a friend who used to work at WEI and his nickname is Donuts, and I still to this day don't know why his nickname is Donuts. But apparently Sean McDonough one time saw him with a donut and was like, "You're Donuts now." And that's just what I've called him for like 5 years. So sometimes someone just says something and it sticks and you're like, "Well, crap, now I'm Donuts," but We'll see. I think Kusi Gangs is good. We'll run that one by him, even though that's not even how you pronounce his name. You don't pronounce the K. It's fine. It's fine. It'll work. We can make it work.
All right.
All righty.
Did you have anything else?
Nope. I'm ready to get on rolling to the Hockey East Championship game. So let's do that. All right, everybody, thank you for listening, watching, and like I mentioned, Sunday we'll drop an episode with Razor, and we're going to be taking mailbag questions. So send those in and enjoy your weekend.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.